Thanks everyone for being here. We're going to be talking about kind of the past year for ADAO and now Summon. We've been doing this just around a year at this point, and really excited to be here and be able to talk about it. I know that obviously there's a lot going on, and we're only able to have a fraction of the people present here in the room, but at least it's recorded, and I think everyone will be able to enjoy all these talks regardless of whether they were live or not, right? So. Yeah, really excited to get started.
That's really great. I didn't know they were being recorded. I'm happy for the ones I missed. But yeah, man, I'm excited to be here. I'm just really grateful that everyone got to come out, that I got to come out, and it's been an amazing experience. So yeah, just really grateful.
Yeah, one of the cool things about the live events like this is you get to meet the people that are just the PFPs on Twitter, or the people that you might have seen on Reddit and that you've been interacting with in the text medium, and you get to see them for the first time, give them a high five, give them a hug. And one of the things with a DAO that we've experienced is that coordinating together is part of that magic, right? I mean, when we meet each other in person as members of a DAO, it's like we've already known each other. I actually met Riley and Tom for the first time in Austin for Consensus, and Tom just pulled up in his car, and I got in, and he's like, "Hey man, how's it going?" It's like we had just picked up our last conversation that had been in a Twitter space, and we just kept going. So one of the beautiful things about this is the ability to make decisions together and build things together. So yeah. I know that I got into DAOs because I was searching for something on Cardano, Twitter. I had gotten into Twitter after being sort of hey, I need to find where the people are who are building stuff. And I kind of hate social media. But I was like, I know that there's on Twitter people actually doing stuff, and I started following people. And Tom was there talking about hey, we have smart contracts now, why don't we have DAOs? Why don't we have a way to build something together? And while I'm not a technical person as a coder, I am a person who cares a lot about building institutions and building things that will last for people to work together. And so that's why I started talking to him and saying what is a DAO? How can we do this?
Yeah, and it, as I said before, started about a year ago in October, and then sort of leading into November, we actually put a contract on chain, and we're able to achieve that. And since then, we've put out a number of open source tools, the most popular of which is called Roundtable, and it allows for anybody to create a multi-sig wallet and coordinate with that wallet and the individual signers. Like I said, it's open source, it's free. We run it for free at roundtable.theadao.io. If you haven't already tried it out, I highly recommend it. We're working within the Summon Association and Summon Labs to offer a number of other tools, which we obviously will also open source with time, but we're definitely trying to make something of this where we can all be in this ecosystem full time and not have to sort of leverage any exterior jobs. So really excited about this, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what's so exciting for me at the moment is we're really starting to see how open source models can be profitable and can bring this immense value to the people contributing to it. So yeah, like Riley said, we have a lot of tools coming that we're going to be offering through Summon via APIs, via the interface, so communities can have their own space, right? As communities, we're already working like this. We're using things like Discord. We already see a few voting apps now that communities are using. We even see communities operating on multiple chains. We know some projects that are operating on both Cardano and Ergo. So being able to bridge those communities using the blockchain is amazing, and yeah, just making it easier for people to actually use all these tools and use them within their community is really exciting to see.
Yeah. So, a year ago, I don't think any of us expected to be sitting here at Rare Bloom. I got my reservation for the resort back in March, but I had no idea I'd be up on the stage speaking. And I think the most exciting part about all of this is how unexpected it was, because we really did just sort of form a group of people that had never met each other, and we ended up really working well together as a team. Some people came, some people left, and the people that stayed ended up being, I think, one of the most resilient teams in the ecosystem. I'm really excited about some of the things we're doing. There's a lot we can't even talk about, but we're definitely looking to sort of extend. Something I can say is we are looking to extend sort of the native script multi-sig functionality that's in Roundtable to allow for a number of different things to occur based on Plutus script, and we're working with a number of teams around that to make the most generic and useful solution, similar to something like Gnosis Safe. But Agora is additionally something that I think is going to be very useful, because multi-sigs are limited in sort of the capacity of signers that you can have, and things get really hairy when you're trying to have a bunch of people sign the same transaction. But with Agora, we can actually have smart contract proposals created where they have a list of effects, and those effects are able to be executed on-chain permissionlessly based on the votes taken within the DAO. So that's something that we're planning to be offering with Summon Platform here in just a number of weeks, not months. We're really excited, but yeah.
So I know this is supposed to be a year in review. That was what was asked. So let's start at the beginning. So Tom, what was your journey? How did you get involved with DeFi and DAOs on other blockchains? And then what attracted you to Cardano that didn't have this, that then made you want to find the people to build it on Cardano?
Yeah, I mean, early it started because I'm quite idealistic, and I saw the flaws in traditional systems. I grew up around it. I was very in tune with it. So I spent my life away from it, right, until I became a dad about 7 years ago. And that's where my fascination with decentralized finance, with what was going on Ethereum, really sparked. And then it was really right away into, wow, there's a lot of hurdles we have to get over. This all sounds great, but it's not very practical. And that's what brought me to Cardano. Last year, I jumped the gun, so early last year, I was in these Twitter spaces on Cardano, just really not happy that we don't have DAO tooling, not happy that we didn't have a multi-sig wallet. And so I just kept talking about it. I kept, expressing this passion in this community. And I quickly ran into others that felt the same. I met Riley, I met Adam, Nate, Illusion, Gabe, so many people, everybody that's here today. I see Wheels back there. It was just amazing meeting everybody, and that's really how it started. It started in a Twitter space, just by people being passionate for something. And that's how it's continued to today. So.
And Riley, I know that you were interested in synthetics for a long time, and that you were sort of like pulled into this DAO space, and we got you to start writing code. Tell us, how did you come up with the first smart contract DAO on Cardano? Tell us about that process.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm being completely honest, the primary objective was to get something on-chain that would work for the small number of people that consisted of ADAO at the time. So the original contract is controlled by only 16 tokens, and those 16 tokens are obviously able to be used. We could mint more using the same Plutus minting policy that was used before, so we could literally vote to mint more tokens. But with regards to sort of scalability, we run into the same issues that a multi-sig wallet would. And so with Agora, we're really able to scale things. When it came down to it, though, like I said, the main thing was getting something that we could put on-chain in a reasonable amount of time and start using to actually show that it works and get people to stop saying that you couldn't make a DAO on Cardano. But I actually originally got interested in the ecosystem based on a number of things that were occurring, and I wanted to create a DAO to manage a basket of different synthetics that represent sort of the CPI, if you will, of an area in a given geographical region, so as to avoid inflation without having sort of mechanisms, monetary policy around it, right? Just using asset pegs and whether it's CDP based or JED based. I know I saw Max back there. Max doesn't like JED. Probably can't even hear me doing something else. But in any case, I got really passionate about the ecosystem, met Tom, and the sort of desire for getting something on chain was very high, and we just made it happen. And ever since then, I don't feel as though our passion has really dwindled.
Yeah, and I know that that's a very real-world example, something that is really easy for people to sort of use and be functional for them. But even when we had smart contracts, the tool set was limited, and you were having to train people how to work with this in CLI, because that's all we had at the time. Tom, what was it like having to use the CLI, having to learn that skill set and interact with everyone else?
I had to learn quick. I mean, you realize right away, right, that it's not scalable. We need to make this really easy for people. And even if everybody knew how to do it, it's still not scalable. It just takes too long. It takes too much effort. Governance is already a somewhat boring thing. So we need to be able to make it fun. We need to be able to, incentivize participation.
Yeah, and I think that's, that's where Agora comes in, and it's not released yet because they're still auditing it. But maybe, Riley, you can tell us how Agora will allow that process to be streamlined, where we're going to be able to have lots of people working with tokens and coordinating in a way that is more, user-friendly on the blockchain rather than having to go into the CLI.
Yeah, so, I mean, one of the primary causes for us being able to move things off of the CLI and into web browsers, I'm sure many of you have used Cardano dApps before. The tooling has increased significantly. We have a number of libraries that are all able to be used for the purposes of off-chain tooling and building transactions, which are then submitted to the chain. So we use a tool called Lucid, actually, internally, and that's maintained by Alessandro from Berry Pool and SpaceBuds. We basically have a API and an interface, a web interface to that API, so that people can come create transactions that not only will instantiate their DAO, but also can be used to create stake UTXOs, that is to say stake governance tokens into the system such that they can be used in creating proposals, co-signing those proposals, voting on those proposals. And once a proposal has been voted on, and if it passes, if there's quorum met in a given result, the effects basically are issued a token, and that token is able to be burnt to do anything that it needs to the protocol. But again, those tokens are only issued to sort of contracts that do very specific things based on the proposal. So that's the basic idea without getting too into the technicalities. But we will have a convenient web interface for people to use for this, a nice UI, as well as, like Tom said earlier, APIs for everything that we're looking to offer through Summon Platform. So really excited to see what people build on top of what we're working with here.
And part of the journey there over the past year has been sort of thinking about how can we help people increase their decentralization, because there's always going to be points of centralization. There's always going to be, we live in an imperfect world. We're never going to have a purely decentralized anything in this world. It's a concept. It's something that we strive towards, right? You can cut things in half forever. But we sort of said, okay, so first let's think about this multi-sig wallet as a product that we can produce to help all the groups out there on Cardano. Let's say there's an NFT group and they're collecting assets together, and they have to trust one person to hold all the funds. That's a point of failure. Well, if we give them a multi-sig wallet, they can make a 3 of 5 multi-sig. Now there has to be 5 people who sign on it. 5 signers, 3 people have to sign off. So now you at least have 3 people rug pulling you instead of just 1. So, that's an improvement. You have some accountability there. And when you go from there, it allows people to start feeling some more transparency. So, Tom, what kind of effect did you see in the community when we started having Roundtable roll out and people adopt it?
Yeah, I mean, enthusiasm, right? Because now, like you said, it's not just this facade of I have a voice. It's I actually have a voice. I have to sign to approve this transaction, and I have to coordinate with the other members to come to some kind of consensus in order to do that. So I think it made it real, right? Because most of this consensus takes place before the actual vote takes place. And so that's how we were operating before. And then you have this multi-sig, it's like an extra step now that we have to do, right? But it really brought it to reality, like, oh my gosh, like it's not just that I have a voice, I have a key. I actually hold a key to this community now, ownership over it.
Yeah, and one of the things that we started seeing was, projects would have their multi-sig. They would have trusted individuals running the treasury. And then you saw Nils come up with his token bot.
Hazelbot.
Where people could, Hazelbot, where people could vote in Discord with their tokens. Now you have a way to get community sentiment. And this is actually something that is also done a lot on Ethereum. But Ethereum has something similar to Agora. Riley, can you tell us why it is that Ethereum has voting off-chain and then just a few people execute instead of just doing it all on-chain if they have that ability?
I mean, what it comes down to is, and the system that Adam had mentioned is called Govern and Bravo, very similar in nature to Agora, different implementations obviously, account-based versus UTXO-based ledgers, but what it comes down to is that in Ethereum and other account-based ecosystems, to be frank, there's an issue that arises around fees. Determinism is not something that's held highly in other ecosystems, and fee markets are well abundant in crypto. So we run into a situation where voting ends up being exorbitantly expensive, and it ends up being something that people cannot prioritize. They don't find the value in it to be high enough. And I think in Cardano we may end up actually seeing the opposite. I think subsidized voting and even incentivized voting may become the reality.
Yep,
You
I
see
agree.
that too?
Yeah, no, I mean, I can't agree more.
Yeah. So when we started looking at Summon, we sort of said, like, okay, we've got these tools from ADAO. We came out with the, with the multi-sig wallet and then our staking portal. And maybe you guys can talk about the staking portal too and tell everyone how that works.
Yeah, so we do have an open source staking portal, and people are welcome to, use it for the things that we're using it to distribute for. They can go to use our front end that we have up, but they cannot actually offer rewards through our front end. They would need to set up their own. We're not willing to take on quite that much liability as a group. So it is a non-custodial staking system in that the users that are staking into the system are doing so in a non-custodial fashion. They're staking into a smart contract. And then the reward calculation happens off-chain, and reward distribution happens directly through the front end. It's something that we found to be really useful internally, but we've also had a number of groups that are really excited to be playing around with it and modifying it for their own purposes. So I think that's one of the things I really enjoy about open source the most.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we're really dedicated to with ADAO is that all the tools are open source. It's available for people to go on GitHub. They can make a pull. They can play with the code. They can use it for themselves, or they can make suggestions. They can tell us how it would be better, and it's a really open ecosystem so that people can put in what they want to see.
Yep, and they can solve some issues and claim some bounties.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I might touch on that just a bit. Within ADAO, we have a huge amount of work that we try to get done right, obviously. And so we incentivize that work getting done by placing bounties on that work. Bounties are sort of instantiated via proposal. And so a proposal could be made to create a bounty for somebody to go and do something. And once the work's completed, we're able to reward the users for, or the contributors for their contributions. It's something where we've seen a number of developers come and go. Some stay for a longer period of time. Some end up leaving pretty quickly but come back. And overall, it's something that we want to kind of continue to expand. We're actually looking at not only coordinating open source development within ADAO, but helping to extend that coordination outside of ADAO. There's a couple of different people that we've been talking to who unfortunately, we're not funded in Catalyst recently, and we believe they should have been. We saw a number of proposals that have great merit and were not funded, and we also saw a number of proposals that have almost no merit and were funded. So with regards to sort of the way we think about things, it doesn't seem right, it doesn't feel right. we did receive quite a bit of funding in this last fund, and we'd like to make sure that it gets to all of the correct people. So we're looking at creating proposals in ADAO that have development, maybe not even in ADAO repositories, but other open source tool sets that are really advancing the ecosystem, like Icon, for example.
Yeah, and just so everyone knows, if you're new to DAOs, ADAO was formed on sort of the spirit of, in Ethereum, what they call a Moloch DAO. Moloch is the ancient god of coordination, and Moloch is responsible for all of the evils in the world because we have these systems of coordination that push us into these things we don't want to do. Why do you have to work a 9 to 5 instead of being able to set your own hours and be creative? It's because Moloch has made the system that forces you into this. And so the idea of a Moloch DAO is that you're trying to slay Moloch. You're trying to give people the ability to break out of the systems of coordination and coordinate with each other. And so ADAO is that implementation on Cardano of saying we're going to be an open source development group that encourages development on the Cardano ecosystem. So we're kind of following in that tradition of the blockchain.
Yeah, and I think another big thing is we've always been education first. So it's just really great to see, some of the most seasoned, well-respected developers in there, as well as some people who are just brand new, all at this equal level, all helping each other, all talking, all really bringing value into the community. So yeah, definitely join the community if you're interested in this kind of stuff. Been sitting here this long, so I'm assuming you are.
I was just going to say, if you are interested in joining the community, the easiest way to find us is go on Twitter, look up ADAO community, one word. You can see how to spell ADAO right there. We've got a link to the Discord there. We've got YouTube. We're going to be pushing up a number of educational videos in the near future. We have some content on there already, but we'd really like to push forward on that some more.
Yeah, and definitely come talk to me in person. I don't love this microphone or the lights in my face, but I do love talking, and I'd love to talk to everybody who's interested.
Yeah, and you guys mentioned Project Catalyst. We do need to give a shout out to Project Catalyst for getting Summon started. Tom started the proposal. He said, you know what, we need to provide people with some consulting. We need to provide people with some infrastructure because ADAO can only do so much as a open source dedicated community. Because there are some people who say, I don't have time to implement it myself. I don't have the resources to implement it myself. Can't we have a trusted group of people who can run a platform as a service that can allow me to interact with my DAO myself? So Tom wrote the initial draft of the Catalyst proposal. He asked all of us to look at it and contribute to it. A very collaborative spirit we have. And we got funded, and that's where Summon came from.
The only thing I would add there is I noticed you used the word trust, and as much as I would love if you'd all trust us, I don't think that's the point of crypto. And I think that the beauty of what we're doing here, it shouldn't require you to trust us. It should only require you to trust the Cardano blockchain and the technology that we're using.
And that's fair. That's very fair. And that's why we try to prove to everyone with our products that you can trust the code. You don't have to trust us as people. You can trust the code. So I'll tell you a little bit about how we have arranged Summon. We can move into that format here. So we got started with realizing that if we're going to be offering a commercial platform, that we'll be taking advantage of the open source tooling, also contributing back to it in the spirit of commercial open source reciprocation. And also offering services, we needed to have a legal structure. It needed to be bulletproof so that we wouldn't get in trouble, and it needed to be done properly so everybody would know that it was sound business-wise. So we found some partners that would help us set up the business, and we registered in Zug, Switzerland as a Swiss association. So that is the structure of the Summon Association. We also have a development company, Summon Labs, that is the primary developer. That's in keeping with the sort of decentralized ethos that a lot of projects follow of having an association that is a not-for-profit association that helps to run the ecosystem and can invite a lot of developers in, and then a primary company to do the development that can hire developers to give them a day job. It's very much, similar to the way Cardano Foundation and IO runs, so you can understand that relationship. From there, we've started just sort of building out the platform. We're very close to being able to have something where people will be able to set up their DAOs and use this as a way just to interact with their DAOs, just like you use your wallet to interact with your wallet software to interact with your assets on the blockchain. Summon platform never has custody of your assets. Summon platform never locks you in. You can take this data, take it anywhere you want. You can find another service provider. You can take the open source code that we're putting in repositories, set it up yourself. But maybe there's a little trust here. You can trust that we're going to continue to develop, and maybe Summon platform can earn your continued usage that way.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, it's funny, we all work quite a bit, and I noticed it's 24 after, we're going till the end of the hour, right? And it's something where we didn't really come up here with anything too specific to say. We primarily came up here with sort of the objective of continuing to spread the word of what we've been doing and what we want to do. I think that Adam put it really well in stating that the Summon platform wants to have basically everything be open source over time. It's our ethos, and I think that it'll be really helpful for the community, not only when we have this coordination stuff open source, but also a lot of the DeFi integrations we've been working on, because I think that the ability for people to leverage DeFi in a way where they are paying minimal fees, and I think that leveraging DeFi in a way where they can run the infrastructure themselves is super important to me. I'm really excited about what the future holds.
Riley, can you and Tom describe what modules will be offered starting off in Summon and how they're going to interact with other products on Cardano?
Yeah, so one of the modules we're going to be offering pretty early on, and it's definitely not going to be at launch because we have priorities to kind of meet, but one of the modules that we do plan on offering pretty close to launch is a public sale module. So as many of you may know, we did a 3-day sale of the Summon tokens, sort of a whitelisted sale. You had to have either one ADAO token, one liquid token, or one MinSwap token in order to participate. And we sold some Summon tokens using the smart contract. It was a non-custodial sale, the first that we were aware of on the ecosystem that was conducted in this manner. And we'd like to open that up so that anybody can create their own non-custodial sale. We'd also like to be able to sort of walk people through what that might look like on the other end of things, but we need to be careful around what services we offer. So I do think that it's likely certain consulting services will be referred because we know groups that would be great for others to work with, and there's certain liabilities that we cannot take on.
I'm done, man. I'm good.
I mean, additionally, we're going to be offering like, when it comes to modules, we're going to offer whatever we can. We're going to offer like staking solutions, vesting solutions, this public sale solution, and anything that the community requests.
Yeah. So the big thing is you'll be able to come in, you'll be able to bring your tokens into the platform, you'll be able to put them in a multi-sig. We're extending out the roundtable multi-sig, sort of have more features. If you already have a roundtable multi-sig, you can just import that right into Summon and start that for your group. You can also set up from right off the bat, hopefully, a snapshot vote for your members. So the way that works is the same as Ethereum for a lot of platforms on Ethereum, where people go to the platform. Like if I went, I would log in with, I would connect with my wallet instead of having to log in any way. So I connect with my wallet. It recognizes my, it recognizes me, and it says, "Hey, you're back. We recognize you. We know that you are a member of these DAOs, and there are votes being called for in one of your DAOs. How would you like to vote?" And when you vote, it puts that signature on the vote so that they know it's coming from you. and then you have that record. And that's the thing that we can offer as a no fee to the user kind of vote, to be a really simple way to get started until we're waiting for Agora to complete its audit.
That'll be a
Yeah.
hot product.
Another way to say no fee is free. I think that's, I like that word. I like the word free. And I do want to offer as much as we can to the community for free because the primary reason we're all here is to provide value in perpetuity. And with regards to Agora, I mean, the audit is well underway. We should have that back within just the next couple weeks, I would hope, maybe another month or two.
Yeah, I mean, I see feeless voting or free voting as something that could help a lot of these different ecosystems. We were just in a Catalyst meeting, and it's exactly the solution that's needed, right? Being able to represent votes on chain, verify votes on chain, and not have to pay for them, not have to pay to vote. You know, it's just so smooth. It's not clunky, it's on chain, and I think it's how a lot of communities and ecosystems are going to operate on Cardano.
Yeah, and we've had the opportunity to have discussions with IO, with a lot of other groups about how we can look towards the future, towards integrating things like Italoprism, so we can have SSI, and we can have the ability for recognition with a lot of other platforms.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have a lot of exploration to do into the self-sovereign identity space, and we're really excited to have such a close working relationship with some of the people on that team. Huge shout out to Tony Rose, by the way, for those of you who know him. But it's one of those things where it's still so early. For those of you who weren't aware, the first use case for Cardano as an identity-aware layer 1 is for the purpose of providing scholarships to Ethiopian children. And it's being done actually very quickly. The work around providing sort of the proof on chain through these credentials issued in Italoprism is already done. It works. There's a contract being sort of finalized to actually leverage that on-chain proof to release scholarship funds to students whose credentials should allow that. And I think that the amount of innovation that's coming in that space is definitely well warranted to keep an eye on. We're really excited to be working in that space. I think not only do we want to be offering things like quadratic voting in the future, but one of the things that we're really excited about is reputation-based systems of governance.
Yeah, and I also do want to give a shout out to Charlie 3 for the work they've done on the Ethiopian scholarship project. It's been awesome working with them, talking with them about things, and getting involved. So I think we've run through everything we can think of so far, so let's open up for questions. And if anybody wants to ask a question from us on the stage, we'd love to answer it. Otherwise, we're going to step off the stage and just talk to you person to person. Yo. Yeah, so the question is, what are DAOs and how do they benefit people? Is that basically it?
Yeah, well, different scenarios, like would it apply to a city, a
Sure.
state, a company, like brainstorm going
Yeah.
forward the next 5-10 years, how DAOs could represent and benefit many different organizations, just like a lot of examples.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see a lot of great ways of bringing DAOs into the physical world. So DAO stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization, and it's a way of having a protocol that manages a treasury. And that can be done in a lot of different ways. Riley's shaking his head because it's a very generalized answer, but it's because it really has so many ways you can answer the question. But okay, so a real world example I can offer is helping to manage an HOA. Everybody hates HOAs. Everybody talks about how terrible HOAs are because generally the worst people in the neighborhood want to run the HOA to be able to do things. But honestly, when I think about it, I think an HOA is the ideal form of government because it's the one closest to the people. It's the people in your neighborhood where if you get ticked off at a decision that the HOA is making, it's because you should just go talk to your neighbors and figure it out. Well, if an HOA decides to use a DAO type of structure what they could do is say, okay, maybe the HOA is in charge of keeping up the sidewalks in your neighborhood or the park in your neighborhood. Let's say the park. And the HOA says, we need to find someone to replace this playground because it's falling apart. So now they're going to ask the members of the HOA to start putting forward proposals. What do you want to replace this falling apart playground? So people come forward with a few different proposals. Part of the proposal is you also have to identify a contractor who says they can do it. Part of the proposal is you also have to have a certified bid from that contractor to say what will replace it. And maybe you get some really good bids out of that proposal framework. And you now have your neighborhood voting to decide who's going, which of these new playgrounds are going to replace the falling apart playground. What you can do now is have your members vote on the Treasury to say, okay, we're going to vote on these proposals, and it's not going to go to just one person to manage it. It's not going to be one person making the decision. All the members of the HOA are going to be getting to have a vote in this, and then the money will be paid out to the contractor through the system because we have it set up that way to help pay for it. So that's kind of like one idea of how it might work.
Okay, that helps a lot to visualize.
And, right now it's one of those things where, I'm sorry, this mic might be a little bit loud. I think it was calibrated for Tom. He was holding it further away. With regards to real-world use cases and homeowners associations and, whatever it ends up being, the thing is if you want to actually get that bid from a contractor and represent that too in this system, that's where SSI really comes in, right? And the ability to say, well, this contractor has built up a reputation with these other groups that we know, and maybe that makes sense then. And another contractor has got no reputation, maybe it makes a little bit less sense to use them. And so that's great. And well, if we chose the contractor who has never done anything before, after he's done doing the work, we can issue him a credential stating that the work got done in the way that we asked, and he builds up his reputation, or she. So I think that the intersection between decentralized finance and decentralized identity is really where we start to get into being able to replace almost every construct in the current traditional world.
Yeah, and I was just going to add, so that's sort of how I deconstruct it, right? I think we're already working this way. I think companies are pretty optimized, right? Like, we know how to build businesses. We know how to build companies. It's just within them we use these very failure-prone contracts, right? We use paper contracts. We compartmentalize things. So really the tools that we're building are a way to replace these systems with more robust systems. So I think, like I said, a lot of the way we organize today will be the same, right? That's the way people organize. But now instead of paper contracts, instead of a small group of people, we can actually do this with code, with smart contracts, and it could be verifiable, transparent, and autonomous. And not only autonomous, but the way that we compartmentalize little subgroups, right, or compartments within an organization. Now we can give them true autonomy with something like a multi-sig. That's what we do in ADAO, right? We have this Plutus contract on chain, we have this large community, but within ADAO we have all these sub-DAOs with their own treasuries, right, that now have autonomy to do what they need to do, and everyone doesn't have to touch everything. It really leads to the most passionate people, the experts, really rising to the top and being able to, and those positions just being so flexible. So, new passionate people, new experts can come in and start revising these systems and building them out. So that's the way I see it continuing. You got a mic? Who's got the mic?
Juan, we got a gentleman right here.
Mr. Juan, thank you.
Actually, I do have a question, or not a question, but a suggestion. Why don't you guys go over a little bit about the part that you guys are taking into the decentralized, the part of the education with IOG, what does someone does and what ADAO does?
With regards to, sorry.
Yes, the difference between what Summon does and ADAO does?
No, it had to do with the application to IO.
Oh.
Yeah. So far, the position of Summon with regards to the stuff that's going on with the Ethiopian scholarships is actually to just help out with regards to kind of holding some funds while the contract is being finalized, right? So obviously, smart contracts are something that we need to have super high assurance on, and there's an NFT drop going on to actually fund these scholarships, and so that's where that's where Summon comes in for this particular situation. But when it comes to leveraging digital identity going forward, that's where, like I said previously, we're really excited to be looking at building reputational systems and integrating those into governance that is represented on chain.
Yeah. For now, though, we're just focused on helping to build out that multi-sig so that those funds can be stored securely and transparently so that everybody knows where they are.
So maybe stick with identity, right? We don't want the China social credit scenario. We don't want CBDC, we don't want central bank digital currencies, but we're building the tools that enables those things. So how are you approaching identity? Like, who are you like, this is so complex, and if you say to somebody, you're gonna have your reputation, they're gonna freak out. So like, how do we think about how are you framing the risks and that line that cannot be crossed and abused?
If I don't
Right.
want to,
Yeah.
If I don't want to interact with you, I don't have to, right? And so if we don't create a DID pair, then there's no DID pair and there's no interaction, and maybe I don't want to interact with the Communist China Party, or the Chinese Communist Party rather, sorry.
And what I would say is, and actually this is a very common argument on wider crypto Twitter of, are we building the tools of our own enslavement, basically? And my answer is, these tools of reputation, these tools of coordination are coming, whether we are involved or not. We have the values of decentralization. We have the values of open coordination and, like trustless systems, and the values of caring about each other. And we need to build tools that can enable that. Ultimately, could the government take the tools that we're building for DIDs, where you have to, when you connect with another registry to make a credential, that becomes something that is required for you to use to gain access to a store, a shop, a library, an airport? They could. That's a political problem that has to be solved through our local jurisdictions, and people need to be talking about that in a political context. But the most that we can do as people who are into technology is make it so that everybody has access to this, and make it so that everybody can have the freedom to connect the way they want to, because the more ways we have to connect to each other, the more options we have, and the more that we can show the best way to go forward.
Yeah, we have to own it. We have to own these tools ourselves.
So we're not going to be building our own identity wallet by any means. I know there's a couple of different individuals I've talked to building identity wallets more specific to identity. I also have talked to some of the Eternal guys and plenty of the team at Lace. I'm really fond of the Lace team, and we get along pretty well at these events. But yeah, I mean, digital identity is something that is going to be integrated into a number of Cardano wallets in the near future, due to the fact that Atala Prism 2.0 is going to be available, and it's already sort of gaining traction for the purposes of these Ethiopian scholarships. And it's really just one big step, but it's the first of many big steps. I think that, I mean, personally, I was expecting where we're at currently with this to be where we're going to be 2 years from now. So I'm actually a bit surprised at the sort of rapid pace in this space, and then also some of the UX decisions that are being made. That's sort of an interesting conversation, because again, this is something where identity is going to be wrapped into the existing Cardano wallets, not just represented in a separate identity wallet.
I think we got a question.
You had mentioned quadratic voting. I was wondering what that was.
Yeah, the idea with quadratic voting is that everyone's voting with the square of their, or the square root of their voting, their tokens. So their voting power is the square root of their token amount held as opposed to a direct representation of their token amount. So say I only have, say, 10 tokens, 10 governance tokens. So I have just a bit over 3 voting power, and you have 100 governance tokens, so you have 10 voting power. And that means that you only have like roughly 3 times what I have as opposed to having 10 times what I had, right? And so it kind of acts as a mechanism to where whales in the ecosystem have less power relative to their total token amount. And the only way that it's able to work is if you're able to distinguish between one human being and another, because otherwise I could just create 100 different wallets and all of a sudden I'm the most powerful person in the DAO. That's not what we want, right?
Doesn't work without identity, without a strong civil resistance solution. Anybody else want the mic? Or you want to go get a drink and a smoke out back? We got one more question. How are you?
Good, how are you? I was just wondering what your take is on the legal structure of a DAO, and just based on what you're saying regarding the protocol and how governance is executed, in a world where we could potentially have DAOs applied to existing organizations, how do you separate the legally compliant expectations from a protocol-based system?
Yeah, that's a great question. So with our platform, we're calling it a DAO platform, but we're definitely trying to make sure it is available and useful to anybody who wants to deal with any sort of decentralized governance and coordination. So even if you're a traditional company or a family or just a club that doesn't have any sort of like legal structure or need for legal structure, you could find these tools useful. Now that being said, what about when you actually start interacting as a DAO, when you start trading tokens back and forth? If you are working with tokens that have monetary value and you are doing things that could be considered something like commercial activity, this is not financial advice, this is not legal advice, but from the research I have done, the general understanding is that their governments will want to have that regulated. And the way that governments generally do this sort of thing is they have ways of looking at it that are you a general partnership, or are you under some sort of a legal personhood, other kind of corporation, let's say. So if you do not have anything like an LLC or a corporation or a foundation or an association structure, like where if you have legally registered your organization in some sort of a structure that is recognized by a legal jurisdiction, a lot of governments will consider your group to be a general partnership where each member of the group is liable for any actions taken by any other member of the group. So if you have members in the US, in Mexico, in Brazil, in the Netherlands, and then somebody does something to somebody in one of those countries, all the people in all those countries could theoretically be sued or get in trouble by the authorities in any of those countries. So that's like the worst case scenario, right? So you don't want to get in trouble under a structure like that. That's why most DAOs adopt what is called in the industry a legal wrapper. You've seen things like Wyoming come out with an LLC, a DAO LLC structure, where they say that the LLC is actually just the algorithm. I've heard a lot of people criticize that, saying that the DAO LLC law is too clunky, but you know what? They're doing some really cool stuff and trying it, and I applaud them for going forward with this kind of legal innovation. I've also seen a little bit about the way Delaware does it and with that kind of permissiveness, and it seems like Delaware is also trying to make it available for DAOs to be organized in this kind of way. Switzerland is known for being a jurisdiction that is very friendly towards digital assets and regulatory clarity. So you'll see a lot of projects such as Summon Association register in Switzerland because they want to have that kind of legal clarity. So we do not offer a Summon platform, Summon Association, or Summon Labs. These organizations do not offer legal advice, do not offer financial advice. But what we hope to do is provide a platform, an ecosystem where people can come together who do that sort of stuff. So if somebody is a financial advisor, if somebody is a lawyer, they can say, hey, I'm part of the Summon community, and I want to talk with your DAO. I want to talk with your club. I want to talk to you about how I could possibly be of service. So that's, I'll pretty much leave it there, is that, everybody needs to be careful about what your legal obligations are. Do your own research. I've given you some ideas of where to get started. And hopefully, as we grow the Summon ecosystem, it's going to get a lot of ideas going so that people can spread those to each other.
Yep. I think that's a great way to end it. If there's no more questions, I think, that's what it's going to take. It's going to take the experts, the people who are brand new and just want to know what a DAO is, to come together and really, make this possible. So I appreciate it, man. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. And one last thing, if you see any of us walking around and you have any questions that crop up in your head later, feel free to pull us aside and ask us those questions. We don't bite, and we'd be happy to chat. So thanks again.
I'll be out back.